time code and it will jump to that specific part of this video. Now this is designed to be a video manual, so feel free to come back and progress the session if you like. For those of you who are pure beginners or intermediate DJs, a word of warning though, this video alone is not going to be enough for you to play great DJ sets. There are many skill sets and pieces of knowledge that you have to be able to combine to crush it in DJ. So I can teach you about this piece of gear, but if you don't know about the rest of the gear that you'll need, or how to find and organize music, or the basics of counting and timing and beat mixing, or the skills of programming and performing a DJ set, or indeed how to successfully get booked to play at parties, things of that nature, you're going to be frustrated. When I got started back in 1992, we didn't have YouTube. We had to learn by trial and error. I learned on cheap turntables and a crappy Gemini mixer, and it took me years of frustration before I got good. I remember nearly giving up several times, but I didn't. I stuck with it, and DJing became my career and has brought me decades of joy. And so I make you that promise. You're going to run into some frustration, but my job is to get you through it. The teaching style that my team and I at Digital DJ Tips use is to focus on the end result, on actually getting you quickly to being able to play in front of other people. That's where the magic happens. That's where the real learning happens. It's not in your bedroom. It's not in your home studio. It's in front of real people. Too many people who want to be DJs spend months or even years locked away behind closed doors, practicing all the wrong stuff, when they could have learned more in just a few hours at a real gig than all those frustrating home sessions added up. Today's DJ gear makes playing gigs, even as a beginner, perfectly possible if you learn the right things early on. Now that said, we have a crash course for beginners called the Complete DJ Course, where I teach you all you need to know to play regular DJ gigs fast. And even better, it works not only for the XDJ XZ, but for all DJ gear. Once you follow the course, you'll be able to play confidently in public on any system. It's about an 80 lesson course at last count. It kind of keeps growing. You get access to me personally as your tutor, and there's lots of other benefits. It's a phenomenal investment in your DJing, and it comes with our 12-month money-back guarantee, so there's no risk. I'll put a link to the course in the description underneath, so you can check out the info page about that. Now, another great resource is our Amazon best-selling book on how to DJ, Rock the Dance Floor, which is a great primer on the big 5 areas of DJing: gear, music, techniques, playing out, and promoting yourself. This has helped tens of thousands of DJs to get started. Again, there's a link in the description, but I'll also tell you how you can get a free copy of this book later on. Now, we've got a tremendous amount of information to cover, so let's get started. So let's start by looking at the inputs and outputs, going from left to right at the back of the unit. This is a Kensington lock, because my Kensington lock cable there to physically stop the unit being able to be removed from wherever you've locked it down. These are our Ethernet or ProLink connections. The first one is for connecting to a PC. If you've got a PC on a network that you want to connect to, you can do it through this extension here. The second two, 3 and 4, are for connecting Pioneer Pro media players. For instance, you could connect up the CDJ 2000 Nexus 2s here, and then they can become part of a bigger unit, all controlled via the mixer on here. This here is the more standard USB for plugging your computer in. Either the extension or this one can be used for plugging in a computer, and you can then use the Recordbox music library on your computer, Recordbox being the software that comes to control various aspects of Pioneer systems. You can use your Recordbox library to DJ from as if it was a USB drive, if you like. You can plug it in either from here or from the more standard USB. And this is the one you would use if you wanted to use Recordbox as a full-blown piece of DJ software, in the same way that you can use Serati and Virtual DJ. They'd all plug in here, and then this unit becomes effectively a big DJ controller. So these are basically the computer inputs. So moving along to this section, here's where we find our outputs. So here's the master output. It's divided into master 1 and master 2. This is a balanced output where you can plug XLR cables in for long reaches without signal degradation. Often you'll send those off to a PA system or something like that. This is for the shorter, generally RCA cables, where you don't need to run them over a long distance. Maybe to plug into studio speakers or bedroom speakers or something else of that type, where you're just using a standard red and white audio cable, which I'm sure you've seen. This is the booth output. This has got a separate volume control. That's the way to think of it. a whole selection here. Depending on what leads you've got, you might sometimes end up using the one that works. So this one is, again, for speakers that are nearby. And in a pro environment, this would be the DJ Green speakers, hence the name, whereas one of these will head off to the master speakers. So this here is a unbalanced send, which will take the channel that you've got the beat effects on the mixer. We'll get to the mixer a lot further on in this video. The channel you've got those set to, send them out to something external. You might have a sampler or an effects unit external. This is quite a specialized use, but it is there for DJs that do carry external stuff, and then you can feed the return back to one of your channels that we're about to get to, should you want to use something external like that. Right, before we move on to the inputs then, let's just talk about this here. This confuses some DJs. This is the ground. This is literally just a ground. It's like a third pin on a plug, on a wall socket. And this is for grounding turntables. Technics turntables generally is the only ground that still has this third lead on the turntable output. We'll connect up to here. You can connect more than one turntable to here. There might only be one ground, but you can connect both your turntables if you're using turntables to here. It stops buzz and hum on the input signal. So that's what that's for. So here are our inputs. We've got two channels of input here. Channels 3 and 4 on the mixer can take an external input. And your choice is of phono or record deck, just another word for record deck, and line inputs, which is another word for CDs. Pretty much anything else that isn't a record deck. So you would plug one or the other into these. So this is channel 4, this is channel 3, which correspond to mixer channels up there. And you'll choose either a record deck or generally a CD player or something you'll plug into these. So the difference is that the phono inputs are made to take a much lower volume input, and then there is an amplifier, a little preamplifier they're called, phono preamplifier, built into this unit that will boost that signal so that it can then go into the mixer at the right volume level, whereas the line inputs don't have that because they don't need it, because that goes on inside your CD player or tape player, whatever it is you're plugging in. So that's the difference between the two, and you have to make sure you plug into the right socket depending on what you're using, otherwise it can sound terrible. The final set of inputs here is this one here. It's an auxiliary input. It's just an extra input with limited control on the unit, but this is for plugging in something like, for instance, your phone. If you want to use your phone as a backup source or a tablet as a backup source, that would plug in here. So moving along, here are our two microphone inputs. These are both what are called omni jacks. That means they are an XLR microphone input, the professional balanced microphone input, but also a mono jack can plug into this hole in the center as well. So you can plug both types of socket into this rather clever, both types of plug into this rather clever socket. Finally, here is our IEC or kettle lead AC input. There's a transformer in here, so it's just a power lead straight to the wall. There's no external power brick or anything here. That plugs in there. And here's our on off button. So let's take a look around the front. So there's actually very little to see here. In fact, we've just got our headphone outputs. We've got an 1/8 inch and a 1/4 inch jack headphone output here. They're not two separate headphone outputs. It's just two different types of socket. So whatever kind of headphones you turn up with, you can plug them in. And if you've forgotten your adapter, then it doesn't matter. All DJs forget their adapter at some gig or other, and nowadays most DJs put phone ties on them, so it doesn't matter. And finally, at the top right of the unit are our two USB sockets. This is where you would plug in generally your USB pen drive. You can plug hard drives in here as well. And these two do slightly different things, which we'll talk a little bit about when we move on to it later in the tutorial. Now, as we spoke about, there's several ways of getting music into this system. So you can DJ with it. You can plug in a USB cable directly to a computer with Chinese record box software and a music library on it, which will just treat the computer like a big music library. You can plug in the same computer via the local area network, even over Wi-Fi, and you can plug in other players that might have a record box library